For over half a century, Canada has been a world leader in the production, use, and development of life-saving medical isotopes. The world is counting on Canada to expand this leadership role to support the diagnosis and treatment of cancer, ensuring medical equipment is safe for use, and to tackle some of our greatest challenges in health sciences. Welcome to the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council's Isotopes for Hope podcast with your host, James Scongack, Chair of the CNIC. In this series, we interview Canadian leaders who are making a difference every day. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Isotopes for Hope podcast.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us on this edition of our Isotopes for Hope podcast. In this second series, we are doing live at the Canadian Theranostics Leadership Summit here at the Mars Discovery Centre in Toronto. And this is a summit of leaders in the isotope sector from across Canada and around the world. And it's co-sponsored between the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council, the Canadian Medical Isotope Ecosystem, which we're gonna talk about here with our guest in a few minutes, and most importantly, University Health Network here in downtown Toronto. And I have a very special guest with me today, Pam Damoff. Pam is the Member of Parliament for Oakville North Burlington. She served in a number of roles, including as the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Indigenous Services, but really has a long history of public policy advocacy, public service, but in particular has been a fierce advocate and supporter for really anything we can do together to, help people who are, challenged with cancer, whether it's families, whether it's our loved ones, whether it's charities. And that really, I think, connected the isotope sector with Pam a number of years ago through some work between Bruce Power, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, Triumph, the Center for Probe Development and Commercialization, that really, Pam, led to the creation of the medical isotope ecosystem. So I really want to thank you for joining us today, Pam, on a really exciting topic.
I'm really excited to be here, James, and thank you for your leadership in this sector as well. We wouldn't be here without you, so I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. Well, that's very kind. And Pam, maybe just to kind of start off. So you, I always say that one of the, the government of Canada, the government of Ontario, any government, they're such large organizations. And oftentimes it is very difficult, regardless of the importance of the file, whether it's isotopes, whether it's, you name it, to really get attention within government, just because of the size of it. And most importantly, if we think about the last 4 to 5 years with the pandemic and a lot of very kind of pressing, immediate issues. And I've always said that the way to get traction is you need some champions. Mm-hmm. And you've been a champion of this sector. But, you have a lot of people show up at your office with a lot of things. What has it been about the isotope file? You've worked within the government. You've worked with the government of Ontario. You've worked across party lines. What is it about this file that sort of sees you?
I think it was a couple of things. One was, and James, I've heard you talk about this often, how we're all touched by cancer. I certainly was. I lost my mom. My dad was a 25-year survivor of cancer. And so hearing about the possibility of medical isotopes when it comes to treating cancer was really exciting, but also really personal to think that there may be opportunities to really change the way that we're treating cancer. And then at the time that Bruce Power first came in to see me, I was Parliamentary Secretary at Indigenous Services. So I had a real window into the challenges that Indigenous peoples in this country face. And I remember, talking about economic reconciliation. And this was a true example of economic reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, where they can be involved in something from the ground floor and be able to participate in the future of isotopes. And that excited me as a way that we can move forward as a government. So it was just something that was really exciting for me. And I thought, well, I'm going to try and do this. As my hero, Terry Fox, I'm often reminded he did something that no one thought that he could, but he did it anyway. And I just figured this was something I'd take on and see where it went.
So Pam, really, I don't think we'd be here without that support, and obviously the Canadian medical isotope ecosystem is a key component of this leadership summit with UHN and CNIC. And so, can you talk a little bit about how this strategy was developed at the federal level? Because obviously we're talking a lot based here in Toronto on the Ontario story, but this is really a national ecosystem. And when you, as somebody in government, or when you're working, whether it's as a parliamentary secretary, working with ministers, working as a member of parliament, what are some of the key ingredients that are important? Because obviously government has finite resources. There's a lot of good ideas. And let's be honest, there's a lot of life-changing pressing needs out there. And what is it about maybe walk us through your thought on some of the key ingredients out there in this sector that you think are very unique to Canada?
Well, I mean, we have the whole supply chain.
Right.
And we're unique that way. And Canada's been a leader on isotopes from the beginning. It's the more I learn, the more I'm just in awe of what Canada is doing. And I think we're at a moment right now where we can take that leadership to a completely other level. If we all work together. And I think one of the things that really drew me to what was happening here, it was the way it was bringing everybody together. Right. And lots of times when you get an industry, there's so many different silos that it actually holds it back. This was saying, okay, we've got Vancouver, we've got Triumph in Vancouver, we've got Bruce Power, we've got Ontario McMaster, Center for Probe Development. It really brings Canada together, and let's instead of trying to race each other to the top, let's work together, and then we will actually get to the top because we're building those partnerships. And I think that was one of the things that helped sell it with the government too, was the geographic diversity of and just the different things that each individual in the partnership brought to the table.
And Pam, I think your message on the unity is so important, because you're right. We have something very special here in Canada. You're right. We have that supply chain that others don't. But there's also a real moral imperative in terms of global leadership here, because others don't have that, and it's not going to be something that is easy for others to develop. So patients out there, they're really relying on Canada. Building on that theme of collaboration. We do live in a time where there's a lot of divisions in public policy. I'm sure we could talk to you all day about that. And I think it's just unfortunately a reality of our politics today. It's a personal opinion. But there are a lot of issues out there that we can come together that rise above all that. And I think this is one of them. And this is a file between the energy policy in Ontario, the energy policy at the federal level between the Trudeau and Ford government. There's really been really good cross-government collaboration on this. Obviously, two parties of two different stripes. So maybe just talk about how important that collaboration is between two levels of government on some of these issues that you can sort of rise above some of the day-to-day challenges.
I actually think Canadians want to see more of this kind of collaboration, and it's something that you're absolutely right. This isn't a partisan issue. It's about saving lives. And you do see the Ontario government, I give them full credit for everything that they're doing when it comes to this sector. And they've been a great partner with the federal government. And I think it speaks to the importance of, the whole future of medical isotopes in our country. But I think sometimes it's individuals as well. And I think people have been able to set aside any kind of partisan difference and say, if we work together, we can do more. And I find it really encouraging. That's the kind of politician I've always been. So I really enjoy, working with the provincial government and working across party lines federally as well. This isn't something that that you'll get anybody arguing about the importance of the investment.
And I think that unity is so important because it gives, we have a lot of people here at the Leaders Summit that are people that are making private sector investments, and that provides policy certainty. And I should mention for our listeners that just recently, yourself representing the government of Canada, but also really close work with Minister Champagne, who's also been a strong supporter and advocate of this. We're at an announcement. He just downtown across the street at Princess Margaret in Toronto with Premier Ford and Minister Smith, and had leaders from the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, had private sector investors, had not-for-profits, had the healthcare sector. And to me, it was just, I left that day just feeling really, really good. It's an example of what we can do when we work together.
Well, you said at that announcement that we could all go home and lay our heads on the pillow that night and know that we'd done something really, really great and really important. And you were absolutely right, James. Like it is something that I have to be honest with you. This summit is only half a day in, and I am even more excited listening to the speakers that have been speaking. And I feel like I'm in a room of some of the most brilliant people, not just in Canada, but in the world. And to hear the kind of research that's being done, the kind of and hearing the challenges that they've got as well, and trying to put my mind to how can we help them fix that. But my goodness, what incredible talent we have here in Canada in this sphere.
No, it's amazing. And we've had a number of other guests that we've talked about on the podcast about how this sector sometimes comes across as a very technical sector, and it is, but it's really people behind all of that, and the workforce and all these brilliant minds coming together. And I want to kind of shift a little bit. Industry is always very good at suggesting what government needs to do. You're used to that in your role. What advice do you have for the isotope sector? We talked about the environment we're in, but we know this is an amazing opportunity for Canada. We should be very proud of where we are, but it is again competing with a lot of other. I think no one is going to disagree, as you said, in terms of the importance of leading the global, fight against cancer through the production and use and deployment of medical isotopes. But as you look at this as a policymaker, what advice do you have for the industry? What do we need to do better? Because it's a two-way street. One of the things I think has been really good with all the guests that we've had, Pam, is everybody agrees that this only works as a team sport, and everybody needs to do their part. So as we think about this as an isotope sector, what's your advice for us?
I think I wish more Canadians knew about what is happening here in Canada. And I toured Nordion and BWXT last Friday, and I went, how does the world not know that this is happening right in our own, right here in Canada, Ontario? I think sort of doing a better job, not with Canadians, but also with elected officials. And we do have we have a Liberal Nuclear Caucus who are quite knowledgeable in all of this, but really raising the profile. And I think as Canadians, we're too humble. And I've said this on other issues as well, but we just go about getting it done. We want to get the work done. We don't want to sing our praises. And I think in this file, I think the industry needs to sing your praises. My gosh, it's absolutely incredible. And with shifting geopolitical around the world, the war in Ukraine, we need Canadians to know that we can do it here in Canada. We can do everything here in Canada, and do it really well. We're not adequate. We're the best in the world. And I think to make sure that more people know about it, not just the people that are sort of inside that medical isotope bubble, but because I think Canadians are really proud when we are the best in the world.
Well, and you raise, you talk about the geopolitics. I think it's a really good point. We often, in that discussion, look at energy security, but isotopes are really another form of energy security. We do know that Russia has historically been a major player in isotope production, and we can't allow situations like the one we have in Ukraine. We can't have isotopes be used as a political weapon, and we have to make sure as Canadians that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so I think the world is counting on us. That's a really good point. Pam, one of the questions I'm asking everybody is, if you could fast forward 10 years from now, so we'll get together 10 years from now and we can review the tape. I don't know if I have any more room for gray hair, but we'll see how that goes. 2034, 2035, you hear all the discussion here. Where do you think we can be as Canada in 10 years when it comes to isotopes?
Oh, my God.
What does that vision look like to you?
One of the things I would like to see is more of the isotopes when they're being produced being available for Canadians.
Absolutely.
I think that's one gap right now, is that there's amazing work happening, but a lot of these radiotherapeutics are not available to Canadians for very legitimate reasons. But I think that's one thing I'd like to see change. But I honestly think that, we've maybe got 2 or 3 years where we can position Canada, that 10 years from now, everybody in the world is going to be looking at Canada for its leadership when it comes to this. They're already coming to Canada to see what we're doing. But I think there's an opportunity here for us.
Well, that's great. And Pam, you have also represented Canada abroad as part of various delegations, parliamentary delegations. And can you just talk about how this role, how we could better integrate into that? There's an entire sort of apparatus that none of us really are exposed to. But Canada is working to position ourselves strategically and find those win-win relationships with countries around the world. Maybe you can just share with people just some examples of, like, I know you travel all the time representing Canada, and just how you think this could fit into that narrative.
Yeah, and I will say, when I travel abroad for Canada, people outside Canada, I think, have a better opinion of Canadians and Canada than we do ourselves. I don't think we recognize how well respected we are around the world. We're a small country, population-wise, but we do punch above our weight in terms of respect and admiration from other countries. And I met with the World Health Organization not too long ago and talked to them about isotopes. How can we ensure that, it's great that North America has available medical isotopes. What about in Africa? What about developing countries? How can we work together to ensure that some of these, groundbreaking treatments are available to people in other countries and level the playing field around the world? I think there's tremendous opportunities to work internationally. And Canada has such a great reputation internationally, probably one of the best. I think we can take some leadership on that moving forward.
Well, it's a really good point, and I know you and I have talked about this before, and I appreciate your advocacy overseas, because the IAEA does have this Race for Hope campaign, and Canada is a part of the IAEA, obviously a very important player at the IAEA, and there's a lot of the isotopes we produce, like cobalt, that can be used in some of these areas that don't have the healthcare infrastructure that we do for some of these advanced theranostics. Mm-hmm. And I often say that there's literally billions of people in the world today that deserve but don't have access to the same kind of cancer diagnostics and treatments we have here.
I have a friend right now whose dad has prostate cancer in Rwanda, and he's getting treatment. It's not that they don't have medical system in Rwanda, but it's nowhere close to what we have here. And it's sad, because he's in a big city. He's in Kigali. He's in a big city. It's not like they don't have hospitals and treatment, but it's nothing like what he would be getting here in Canada.
Well, and we all want our loved ones and family members to have the best, right? And I wish him I wish him success. And
thank you.
Obviously going through a difficult time. Well, look, I really appreciate you joining us today for everything that you have done for our listeners. To call a spade, we want to promote this sector because we think it's it's something we can unify on. You and I have talked about that. And we'd encourage our listeners to share this on social media, share it with your channels, share this podcast, because you're right, we are too humble as Canadians. And I always say humility is actually a great thing. That's what my parents always taught me. But it can sometimes be a detriment if it inhibits your ambitions. And so I think here in Canada, we have that unique humility, but we also have the drive to be ambitious and make a difference. And that combination, I think, is very powerful. And so I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, James.
Thanks, Pam.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council Isotopes for Hope podcast with James Scongack. Please share this podcast and follow us to stay in the loop. To learn more, please visit our website at canadianisotopes.ca.